President Trump launches a travel ban into Europe, but not the UK. The stock market opens considerably lower than it should have, and U.S. society continues to shut down amid fears of COVID-19 or the coronavirus. It's going to be a dark day, folks, but stick with me and we'll get through it. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Ooh, wah, ah, 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 indeed, folks. It's going to be a dark day, and it's pretty much going to be all coronavirus news because that's all anybody can talk about at this point, and that's going to be worldwide now, not even just right here in the United States. I mean, it's bad enough from everything we've seen in the United States, but I've been joking that I got the Wu-Tang flu ever since I got sick back when it was still not on mainland United States. And now people are just not even heeding warnings and doing whatever the hell they want to do, and they may have a point there as well, and we've got plenty to talk about here. So, to start off with, let's go ahead and talk about this speech, the speech that everybody's talking about here. And first thing I want to say on this is, given what Trump said last night, and I have not listened, but I've gone over the highlights from CNN, because that is completely impartial, I know. But given what I've seen off of this so far, what I gotta say is I can't wait to go looking through Twitter for the next couple days and try and figure out how Trump is racist for banning travel from several predominantly white countries. That's going to be an interesting one to watch here. So let's see what CNN has to say. This is by Kevin Liptak and Megan Vasquez over at CNN. President Donald Trump said Wednesday he was sharply restricting travel to the United States from more than 24 European countries, a drastic step he framed as an attempt to contain a spreading public health crisis that has engulfed the presidency, caused global market turmoil, and disrupted everyday life. In a primetime Oval Office address meant to rebut criticism he's taken the matter too lightly, Trump framed his announcement as a suspension of all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days. But immediately afterward, his administration made clear it was not as drastic as the president stated. The ban will only apply to foreign nationals and not American citizens who had been screened before entering the country, mimicking restrictions he applied to China last month. Trump was also forced to clarify he was not blocking goods from Europe, despite saying his ban would apply to the tremendous amount of trade and cargo across the Atlantic. He tweeted the ban would apply to people, not goods, after stock futures tumbled on the prospect of a trade freeze. And we are going to go into that, of course, because that is... that's pretty big. That's pretty big in and of itself. And I got in the habit pretty early on in this administration to not panic when the Donald does something that I would perceive as pretty stupid. He's done quite a few things throughout the last 3.5 years where I have looked up and said, are you out of your goddamn mind? But Trump has this knack of doing things, getting things done, and they wind up being for the better good. They wind up coming out better than anybody could have ever expected. So I am generally in the practice with Trump of waiting just a few weeks before I start panicking and before I start talking about something that, before I start saying that this is going to tank the war. I am not going to lie, this is probably one of the most nervous aspects that I've had out of this presidency. This is the one where I'm starting to wonder if this is actually going to be where he slips up. I can't lie about that. I think this is actually going to be where I think he's slipped up and I think he's gone too far. But in 2 weeks, it's very possible that I'm going to be wrong because I have that track record with this president where I think this is definitely the one, and then in 2 weeks, it's all hunky-dory and everything is better than it was before. So we are going to wait before we start sounding the alarm bells on this, but I'm going to put my protest out this time. I'm actually going to protest this one and say, what are you thinking? How is this going to help anything? So, because of this, let me find make sure I get the right news story here. We'll talk about that in just a sec. Yep, there we go. So, according to Fox News then, after the speech was done, looks like Don Lemon and John Kasich had a little bit of a meltdown over this one here. So this is from Joseph A. Wolfson over at Fox News. CNN anchor Don Lemon had a total meltdown on Wednesday, critics observed, after a guest on his show told him that President Trump's coronavirus address from the Oval Office was fine. Lemon, who has repeatedly insisted that he is not partisan, had on former 2016 presidential candidate turned CNN contributor John Kasich to discuss the latest developments in the Trump administration's handling of the coronavirus outbreak. The anchor accused Trump of misrepresenting the travel ban that was set on Europe after the White House offered clarification on what was affected. First thing I want to say is just how funny and stupid it is that Kasich is on CNN. I think that is dumb beyond belief. Because, I mean, they're never going to accept this guy. And, I mean, they were calling him all the worst names in the book while he was running for president. But, I mean, now that he's anti-Trump, and he was one of the big anti-Trump voices on that one. Now that he's anti-Trump, he is just fine. In fact, he is exactly what they were looking for. So, I just think that is incredibly funny that now he is the contributor over there. So, let's read on. Look, I watched the address tonight and I thought it was fine. He did fine, Kasich said. I'm glad he did the address tonight and I think it was important. Kasich urged the president to stick to the script and said governors will have a major role in combating the virus. However, none of that apparently sat well with the CNN anchor. I don't know if he stuck to the script or not, but whatever script he read was wrong because they had to clarify it several times, Lemon complained. And I've just got to say, if the president came out to calm people's fears, he didn't do a good job of it. I will give Don that one. Because he had to come back and clarify it several times, and this has been going on long enough for them to get it straight. We need straight, accurate information from this president and this administration, and we're not getting it. His tirade continued, and I don't understand why you're tiptoeing around it. He came out and gave an address that happens very rarely, and he doesn't get it, right? First of all, he read it, Kasich responded, and I don't want to get into that. Why not? That's why you're here, Lemon exclaimed, to talk about the president's address. Can I finish? The former Ohio governor attempted to complete his thought. No, you can't, John, the anchor shouted, because we're here to talk about the president. I don't want you to go on and deflect and talk about something else because we're here to talk about the president's address. And you said that someone else wrote it. He's the president. Even if someone else wrote it, it should be right. Kasich, a longtime critic of the president, and that's what I was talking about earlier, defended the Trump administration, telling Lemon that they were attempting to address the confusion out there. So this went on for quite a while here. The full article is over on Fox. And yeah, I mean, Lemon just melted down over this. And I mean, I can see what Kasich wanted. And Kasich does have that executive air to him that I've given to the president as well, especially when we started off with this coronavirus COVID outbreak, because I mean, you can either tell the world to panic and then they will rush the stores and wipe out the toilet paper aisle and knock each other out for a can of beans, or you can tell them that it's going to be just fine to go and calmly do what they need to do a little bit of light prepping, and let things run their course. And I am generally in the camp of not telling people to panic, and I see Kasich there as well. But, I mean, CNN, as so I've noticed, especially the last 3 years, is definitely in the business of telling people to panic because it sells commercials. It gets people glued to their television and the internet, looking at the ads, and gets them coming back for more. They feed off it like a drug, and CNN is the dealer for this. So I can definitely see the back and forth and why it's going on there, and Lemon has been one of the worst offenders of dealing in the panic. Now, I am not saying that this is not panic-worthy. I'm definitely not saying that. And I mean, looking at the stock market this morning, how it was expected to open, which it did a bit ago while I was writing all of this up. Looking at how it was expected to open, we can see the effects of what happens when people panic. So trying to calm people down, trying to get some certainty into a very, very uncertain time is something that is definitely beneficial to the people and the society at large. So good for Kasich and screw you, Lemon. So speaking of the stock market here, let's go over and talk about the stock market and what's happened there. And we're just going to go right into a transitional article that deals with both the speech and the market. So this is from CNBC, published by Christina Wilkie over there. Let me make sure that's not going to start spitting volume. Well, I've got the volume killed, I guess, so I'm not worried about it. President Donald Trump announced that a ban on travelers was to the United States from. Okay, let me read that again without looking like I'm dyslexic here. President Donald Trump announced that a ban on travelers to the United States from Europe would be in place for the next 30 days in an attempt to stem the spread of the coronavirus pandemic. Calling coronavirus a foreign virus, Trump attacked Europe for not taking the same actions to control the disease that he had. As a result of Europe's inaction, Trump said a large number of clusters of coronavirus were seeded by travelers from Europe. Trump also announced that he would ask Congress for legislative action to provide payroll tax relief, as well as other measures for several groups impacted by the virus. And that is all good. He says the ban would apply only to countries in the Schengen Economic and Travel Zone, and that the United Kingdom and Ireland would be exempted. He also clarified in a tweet that cargo and goods would not be affected by the ban. Now we are looking over here to the backlash from this. U.S. stock futures fell sharply as Trump concluded his speech, with Dow Jones Industrial Average futures more than 600 points lower, and that was last night still. It appears that it's almost 1,100 points down at this point. Those losses would add to the 30 stock average's deep decline on Wednesday that put it more than 20% below its record high for the month. And I do want to point that out. I mean, it looks bad, and where we are going with stocks right now are bad because the markets hate uncertainty between the oil war that we're seeing right now and this, which is why I say I'm actually a bit nervous about the president's actions right now, and the coronavirus in general, where people can't go to work, where people are buying up supplies and toilet paper and everything. This is an uncertain time, and markets do not like uncertainty. But with 20% down on our record high, I mean, we're better off than we were in 2016. We really are. Excuse me. Hell, we're better off than we were in 2017 still, even with the drops. Now, we're going to be watching this closely because I don't want to see this go down to the point where we're back to 2016 levels, because we can do better than that as Americans. We can absolutely do better than that, and we can come together and combat this. We can calm each other down, have community, even if we have to have telecommunity for a little while. We can combat this without the government intervention on this. I know a lot of people want government intervention for this, but keep in mind that we were founded to be a country of individuals and individual ideals. So don't always put everything that you have into the government, and we will find a way to come through this at some point here. We are Americans. We come through some of the worst things together. What else do we have here? In other news going on with the stock market plunge and ways to combat this as well. We also have from over on the Hill, this is from Jordan Kearney, Congress pours cold water on Trump's payroll tax cut. Good. I'm going to put that right out there and say good. As much as I am in favor of everybody keeping more of their own money and eliminating the payroll tax and taxation being theft, I know the American people around me, especially the middle class here, who, like I said yesterday, do not look at what they're paying in taxes, only look at what they're supposed to get back at the end of the year. A lot of people who are going to start getting bigger paychecks and go out and run and spend those paychecks and then be surprised when they come back with a big federal income tax bill because they suspended payroll tax, not income tax. So before I even read this article, good. A payroll tax holiday, especially one that's as long as the president was suggesting, is only going to hurt the middle class. Absolutely. I'm sorry. But President Trump's push to cut the payroll tax as part of an effort to revive the economy is facing steep headwinds on Capitol Hill. Trump has spent days making the pitch publicly as well as privately, as Washington is under growing pressure to try and shore up the stock market, which has plummeted this week over growing concerns about the growing coronavirus outbreak. House Democrats are set to unveil an economic response package that does not include payroll tax cut. Meanwhile, Senate reactions range from deep skepticism to, in some cases, outright opposition, raising the questions about whether a plan could ever reach Trump's desk. I know that's in the conversation. I would prefer they exercise other options before going down that path, said Senator John Thune, South Dakota, the number 2 Republican senator, while caveating that it's too early to make decisions on legislation. Senator Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana, predicted that a payroll tax cut would spark resistance not only from fiscal hawks, but a broader swath of the Senate GOP caucus. Yes, they're acting as if this is going to be an income tax cut, as if the IRS is going to let go of any of their money. They are not looking at this at all for what this is actually going to be. So, like I said, as much as taxation is theft, and as much as I would like to see it all go away, without the federal government coming down and saying we're going to suspend income tax along with payroll tax, this is not a good idea. The only positive and the silver lining that I can take out of something like this would be that it would force the Americans to have the conversation about the tax code. So, over on CNBC, they're actually giving us a morning update on this. This was published at 6:06. Oh, okay. This was updated moments ago, I should say. This is from Fred Imbert and Thomas Frank over at CNBC. Stock futures tank hit limit down halt after Trump's speech. Dow set to fall 1,100 points. So last night it was 600 points. Today it's 1,100, which I'm not surprised because, once again, markets do not like uncertainty. And if you're losing some of that global trade, you're not in a good place. I'm kind of glad my cousin got back from Italy already because, yeah, this probably would have affected her as well. And Italy's on lockdown on top of it, so. You got back at the best time, little cuz. She spent, I don't know if it was a semester or just a few months over studying over there, so. I'm glad you're back. Futures contracts tied to major U.S. stock indices dove early Thursday after an address from President Donald Trump failed to quell concerns over the possible economic slowdown from the coronavirus. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and NASDAQ 100 all traded at so-called limit down threshold, off by 5%. Dow futures implied a loss of more than 1,100 points at the open. The SPDR S&P 500 ETF Trust (SPI), which tracks the S&P 500, was down 6.2% in the pre-market. Exchanges halt trading of futures contracts if they drop by more than 5%, acting as a floor for selling until regular trading resumes at the opening bell at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. After stocks open in regular trading, the S&P 500 must drop by 7% before triggering the New York Stock Exchange's circuit breaker, which halted morning. Later that day, the S&P 500 also hit New York Stock Exchange's 7% circuit breaker, and the Dow fell more than 2,000 points. And this is going to be what's important here, and we'll talk a bit about that in just a second. Cruise line shares dropped sharply. Royal Caribbean traded 25% lower in the pre-market, while Carnival and Norwegian Cruise Lines slid 23% and 26.8% respectively. Airline shares such as United, Delta, and American all fell more than 14%. Yes, they are doing what they can to sell right now. From what I saw, and I was just doing this out of curiosity, because I mentioned before that I am looking at going on a little or I was, before all of this happened, looking at going on a little cruise from Orlando to the Bahamas, just to calm my nerves, because I'm calmed by water. But yeah, now I don't want to be on a cruise ship because, and that's been one of the things that's been hit hardest in the news thus far off of all of this, is the fact that the cruises all shut themselves down. The Diamond Cruise Line over in Japan kept people there for 2 weeks, and then they went off into quarantine after that. And now we've got the Princess Cruise Line that's docking in Oakland that everybody's going straight into quarantine for. This is just a giant incubator that you cannot get off if you see somebody coughing. Mrs. RRC said on my show on Monday night that if you shouldn't be doing anything right now as far as vacation goes unless you are getting ready to drive yourself to go somewhere, and even that would kind of start to nerve wrack me here. I know I was planning on going down and crashing on Ignoramus's couch for a few days and eating some of the food over in DC and maybe doing some of the Fallout 3 hiking there. But I mean, DC is a crowded place too, and I don't necessarily know if I do want to go down there, even if I drive myself, because then I'm going to take I could get this COVID ID or spread it or get it all up here. Somebody might cough on me, and there I go. I'm up here and spreading it around Wisconsin and whatever little bit of a capacity I have in this small town here. So I can see why the cruise lines are. And I just kind of looked for a curiosity at what the prices were, especially in the nearby cruises, because I know they don't like to have open cabins, so they'll sell at a discount as you get closer. But the prices are not dropping on Carnival's line compared to what I saw when I was actually planning on doing this. But airline is, oh my god, airline is dropping like a stone. Tuesday, just out of curiosity, I looked at just what it would take for me to fly down to Orlando and hang out with the Generational Gap guys, because they're right there. Even if I don't go out on the water, just go hang out with those guys. And to get on the plane, I could have left on Friday and come back on Sunday if I had taken the red-eye both for $108 plus applicable state and local taxes. That is ridiculous, especially for that short. Usually, once you're running that short and that close up, you are running at hundreds upon hundreds of dollars, like maybe even $1,000 to take a flight like that. Usually, if you're going to get a price that low, you've got to plan out considerably, months in advance. I mean, Midway to New Hampshire a couple years ago was $600 for two people. And yet now I can, just by myself, go there and back for 54 there and 54 back, as long as I take both the red eyes. So, yeah, Southwest is definitely taking a hit off of this. And they're trying to sell just so they can get the plane full, so they can get their money back out of the flight. And it's a little bit scary because, yes, that is going to drive the stocks down. And it's going to affect other industries, too, because tourism is going to go down. People are going to be buying tourist goods. People will obviously be buying gas, which, given the fact that gas is so low, we can see that, yes, we may have a bounce back off of this. But, yeah, for the most part, tourism is going to grind to a halt. Or so we thought. We're going to be talking a bit about that here in the near future. So this is definitely something to watch. This is definitely something we need to pay attention to and make sure we diversify a little bit to try and get some of this back up and maybe see if some innovation can happen in this country to try and combat what we see here. So with that, that's going to be the business and the government aspect of everything here. So let's go ahead and look at the society aspect of this. And this is the one that surprised me as well, because there's a lot of money tied up in the NBA just for a season, because they play games almost every day to packed arenas where people just want to go. I mean, the money that you pay for a ticket, the concessions, which are massively ridiculous, and everything else that goes along with it, they are losing out on a lot of money to do this. But according to NBC News, NBA suspends all games as coronavirus spreads. The league said it will use the hiatus to determine the next steps after a player for the Utah Jazz preliminarily tested positive for the disease caused by the new coronavirus. This is from Ahiza Garcia Hodges over at NBC News. Maddow's talking, but I've got everything muted, so thank you, Maddow. The NBA suspended all games starting Thursday after a player for the Utah Jazz preliminarily tested positive for COVID-19 rather, the disease caused by the new coronavirus. The league said play would be suspended until further notice. The test result rather was reported shortly before tip-off of Wednesday night's game between the Utah Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder in Oklahoma City, according to a statement from the NBA. Well, let me give you a hint about this, because your moments before tip-off, people have been lining up for this already, and everybody's already been out drinking wine and interacting with each other. You're a bit too late at that point, I'm sorry to say. But let's read on. According to a statement from the NBA, the game was canceled immediately. The affected player was not in the arena at the time of cancellation. The NBA also announced that it would use the hiatus to determine its next steps. A game between the Sacramento Kings and the New Orleans Pelicans in New Orleans was also suspended because one of the referees at the game had worked a Jazz game earlier in the week, according to NBC Sports. Wednesday night's other games were allowed to go ahead. The move by the NBA is the biggest in the U.S. to date in response to the concerns about the spreading coronavirus. Earlier Wednesday, the NCAA said it would restrict attendance at its coming Division I men's and women's basketball tournaments to staff and family. So an NBA game, like I said, is $1 million investment. Every time they open up a stadium, just to turn the lights on the stadium costs them probably a few $100,000, if not $1 million, to go get that started, to go start getting people filing into the benches, to get ready to go with the tip-off, and then, like I said, once everybody's in the stadium, you're almost too late at that point, so you might as well just play the game and recoup the losses for the next few weeks. But, I mean, this is huge. This is millions, if not billions of dollars that the NBA is going to lose over the next few weeks until they decide what they're going to do. So they're panicking and taking this seriously. And this is going to lead into the $1,100 drop in the wow, I have too many acronyms going on here. I can't keep them all straight. The 1,100 point drop in the Dow Jones, this is going to fuel some of that, along with the airlines and everything else. So, yeah. This is huge, and the panic is setting in, and that's going to cause us to drive even further. That's why I said we need to come together and figure out how to do this without government intervention, because everything that governments and other big entities are doing are seeming to drive us deeper into the recession. So let's go on and see what else is going on here. This caught my interest right away yesterday morning. I saw this right after I stopped Contemporary yesterday. So Ohio college students riot after classes, housing closed over the coronavirus. This is from Jaren Steinbach over at New York Post. Students at the University of Dayton in Ohio broke out into a riot after the school announced that the suspension of classes and on-campus housing amid concerns about the coronavirus outbreak, according to reports. Police from several agencies responded to the university after a report that a crowd of over 1,000 people had congregated Tuesday night and refused to disperse, the Dayton Daily News reported. A large, disorderly crowd that grew to more than 1,000 people gathered on Lowe Street, starting around 11 p.m., throwing objects and bottles in the street at police and jumping on cars, the school said in a statement. Police gave verbal orders to disperse, which were ignored. Police initially launched pepper balls, which contain powder with an irritant that disperses quickly, that were unsuccessful in reducing the crowd size. About 2:15 a.m., UD police and additional Dayton police gave orders to disperse and move to clear the street, which was effective in dispersing the crowd quickly. At least one person was reportedly injured by a thrown bottle, the statement said. Some of the students said they were celebrating the cancellation of classes due to the outbreak, WDTN reported. So, I didn't find the article that I found yesterday morning, and a lot of that was Twitter banter going back and forth. But from what I understand out of this, and the New York Post did not hit on this is less about the classes being canceled because, I mean, what student doesn't celebrate canceled classes? They get to go have fun instead of going to class. The problem that they're having here is the fact that University of Dayton forcefully shut down the residence halls. They didn't give any sort of lead-in or anything for people to find someplace else or something else to do. They just said, you're all out on the street at this point and figure it out on your own. which should be good and normal for college students to go and try and figure stuff out on their own, but this generation of college students couldn't figure it out if their life depended on it. So a lot of these people are coming from out of state, and with no warning for this, no way to plan for anything, and really no other options at this point. A lot of them are homeless right now. They're not homeless. They can go back in with mommy and daddy or whatever. But I mean, especially some of the foreign students don't actually have some place to go, and some of the other out of staters, are they allowed to have a car? Are they allowed to go out and get in a flight? Can they just pick up and fly somewhere right away? Can mommy and daddy come and get them right? There's so many other factors that went along with this. If what I'm reading is true, and they're right to riot because they've paid good money to have this area to at least lay their head and keep their stuff. If Dayton would have given at least probably a 2 or 3 day lead in, I don't think they would have seen riots like this. Yes, it would have sucked for everybody, but the fact that they just said, okay, well, effective immediately, you're out on the street. Yeah. These students were, especially with the money they've paid in for residence or they've borrowed for residence, yeah. They are right to come out and riot and try and figure this out. And at least Dayton should have given somebody some sort of a backup plan on this one. So good for Dayton students. I mean, the violence, obviously, you shouldn't. I'm not advocating violence or anything, but to stand up and protest, especially given the fact that you've spent money on this and there's a lease in place, good for you guys. In UW-Madison, in local news for me, UW-Madison is closing all of its in-person classes. I saw this yesterday. UW-Madison cancels in-person classes through April 10th at least. This is from NBC 15 WMTV, a local news station over here. I was actually going to use Channel 3000, one of the local powerhouses here, but I'm glad I read all the way to the end of the article before I did, because it is actually against their copyright for me to even read from them on another broadcast. Anybody who's doing this, doing any sort of news coverage like this, make sure you read the article, because usually at the end, if they don't want you reading it, if they're going to be stingy about it, like Channel 3000 is, they'll tell you right at the end that you're not allowed to use it. But this local NBC affiliate is okay with it. So this is from Nick Viviani, Jackson Danbeck, posted 11:18 a.m. March 11th. The University of Wisconsin-Madison will suspend face-to-face instruction starting Monday, March 23rd, the day students were expected to return from spring break. In a post on its website, UW-Madison said they will begin alternate delivery of classes starting that day, and it will continue that way at least through April 10th. University officials expect to decide in early April whether or not regular classes will resume at the time. While there are relatively few confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Dane County, there are 2, and 1 is recovered already, by the way. The number of cases nationally continues to grow. Our health partners tell us that now is the best time to act in ways that slow the spread. So there was another article that I wanted to read on this program because it affects kind of the decision that they made off of this here. But it's only on Channel 3000, and like I said, I can't rebroadcast it. But I'm going to summarize it the best I can. So essentially, the UW-Madison students were saying that they were definitely going to continue to go on spring break because they'd already bought the tickets, and most of them didn't have the option for a refund on their tickets. So yes, there are very few cases here in Wisconsin, and I'll talk a bit about the other ones that are on there, and especially only the 2 in the county that the UW-Madison is in, Dane County. There are only a handful of cases here, but these people are going to be going into these incubator hotbeds, going out drinking, hooking up, and partying, and they're going to bring it back here. And then we're going to have other confirmed cases. And like the article said, this actually doesn't start until March 23rd, when they were expected to come back from spring break. So they're nipping this in the bud. They're keeping people from going out and partying and getting drunk and stupid, and then coming back and spreading around a major pandemic. I don't say good for the University of Wisconsin too much, but good for the University of Wisconsin on this one. They're nipping this in the bud. They're giving people a chance to actually figure things out, unlike what Dayton did. Giving people a chance to find a new place to stay, a new place to go, and take their classes from, a chance to get home to mommy and daddy if they need to. Yes, absolutely. This was great. This was well handled. This was very well done. Good for the University of Wisconsin. In other news, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson are both diagnosed with the coronavirus. I don't know who Rita Wilson is. I'm not going to lie to you. I've never heard that name before, but I mean, you're in Los Angeles, Tom Hanks, even in your massive, massive mansion, of which I believe you have more than one, but even in those barred away and walled away from everybody else, this is an airborne virus, and you live very close to one of the biggest hotbeds of people. And this is a West Coast thing. Of course, this was going to happen here. And for the most part, people only care because it's Tom Hanks. But I do wish you a speedy recovery. I hope that it doesn't get too cramped in your mega $1 million mansion. I hope that the best medical care that money can buy can help you out. And I hope you enjoy all of this. So, yes, Tom Hanks absolutely has coronavirus, and he's confirmed. Whoever Rita Wilson is, too. And the last story that I have out here is what is happening here in my state. So this is from CBS 58 out of Milwaukee. 3 more cases of coronavirus confirmed in Wisconsin, 2 in Fond du Lac County, 1 in Waukesha County. Which is a little scary because I actually go to Waukesha County regularly. So what's bothering me here, and of course a lot of people are just thinking that they have the flu right now, so they're not getting tested for anything. But the 5 cases that are in Wisconsin are actually relatively spread out across the state. I could see that if they were kind of close to one another, I mean, Dane and Waukesha County are kind of close to one another, but not really. But it's 2 in Dane, 1 in Waukesha, 2 in Fond du Lac County, which is North Milwaukee area, and then 1 in Pierce County, which is all the way on the other side of the state. So they're spread out, which I'm guessing means that there may be some transmission in between. And there may be cases out there that people never got tested for because, like I said, they probably thought it was the cold or the flu or something else like that. So it's here. I'm taking the preparations. I'll be checking in again, and I'm supplied. If I go to the grocery store and I can't get anything, I'm set. I'm good. But it's going to be interesting to see because obviously I'm going to go out and see if I can buffer up the supply a little bit here coming up on Monday, as long as they've got the big coupon sale going on still at the grocery store I go to. I'll go see if I can buffer up some of the supplies a little bit, rotate some of the stuff out from what I've been eating, or if everything is going to be wiped out because it got this close. For the most part, Wisconsin seems to be sane about all of this. They don't seem to be going nuts about all of this. They seem to be going about their business, but it's going to be interesting to see because we've suddenly gone from 1 confirmed case to 5, and 1 recovered case, by the way. So I'm not panicked about this, and like I said, if people are going to go and be nuts about it, I'm not going to be I'm not really worried about it, but it's a thing. So we didn't have any mailbag questions this week, so I'm going to go back and do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. So thing that I like, of course, is the fact that, yes, I live in small town America, and I, for the most part, don't have to worry about this. I know Tim Pool went out and put a photo out of his local Walmart where a lot of stuff was wiped out and a lot of people were in panic, but he says he's not in the city, but he is in the city. I'm out in the rural area where people are sane and people help each other out. And like I said, I prepared in case I have to hunker down. But for the most part, I think things are going to be just fine here. Nobody's wandering around like anything's any different. And it's a good thing. Like I said, if you people would spread out just a little bit here, a lot of this panic would go away, I think. Human beings do have a tendency to gather together and want to band together, and that's part of what we get with some of these major, massive cities out here. But I mean, come out here into the rural and country life and enjoy the fresh and clean air and enjoy the fact that a lot of this panic isn't going to affect you here. And we're going to go on to a thing that I hate. So, on Twitter, the Bernie Bros are extra salty over the last couple days, and I mean they're continuing to double and triple down on positions that they've been arguing with for 3 days. It's like they're going back through timelines of Bernie Sanders and trying to find ways to attack people who disagree with him because they're on the lower end and people don't believe the way that they do. So, I mean, I just had some guy come out and try to argue against me on the fact that taxation was theft and that if you don't pay your taxes, a man with a gun comes to your home and takes you and puts you in a box. In the meantime, all of this, he told me that before a man puts a gun to your head, he's going to put you in a box. And I reminded him that the man who's going to put you in the box has a gun on his hip. And then he continued to go out and confirm that taxation was theft because if you don't pay your taxes, they garnish your wages and garnish your bank account. I don't know what world these Bernie kids live in, but that is theft. And it shows the power. It shows why the government has the power because the masses accept the fact that they have the power, which is the thing that I hate. The masses accept that the government has the power, and they actively try to increase the power to the government as they go along. So, taxation is still theft, and no matter how many people get on board with it, 51% of the people in the country decide that they want to take all of your money, point blank at gunpoint, it's still theft. It's democratic, but it's still theft, and it's not what you owe to society. I didn't sign a promissory note. I would be all for a voluntarist government, but of course we can't get there, especially with global pandemics going on like this and the president shutting down travel to all sorts of places in the world to try and curb something and try and correct for the fact that people said that he didn't react harshly enough. He goes from reacting not harshly enough to overreacting and reacting too harshly. So that's all that I have for the day. We will be back here tomorrow, hopefully with a lot less panic and a lot better news, but given everything I've seen so far this week, I'm not very confident about that either. But until then, until tomorrow morning, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.